I escaped through the window as the door crashed open, revealing Donald and his smiling, whistling face. Below me was a long drop. Right, certain unavoidable death. Behind me, well, Donald. You get it. However, I'd have one source of survival remaining, the fire escape. If I was able to make the jump to the neighbour's apartment balcony, I could then jump over the nearby fire escape and make a run for it. I thought about that, and I leapt for the neighbour's balcony just as Donald appeared behind me. I leapt, catching onto the metal bars of the balcony as that thing that was Donald flailed its hands after me. "Ha!" I cheered, laughing at the thing as I got up. "Take that, Donald!" And then, of course, Donald seemed to teleport over onto the wall separating the balcony and began to crawl, growling as he did, yet that smile never left his face. I turned back and ran, leaping up onto the fire escape just as Donald leapt onto the balcony. The fire escape audibly creaked, as if it would crack. That's when I noticed the sign signalling that everyone used the alternative fire escape, as this one was supposed to be replaced. Stupid luck. Or karma. I could feel the structure barely hold my weight, and that's when Donald leapt onto the fire escape, and I began to see creaks in the poorly built metal. I screamed like a baby, while Donald growled as the metal screeched, and a snap was heard as the pillars of the structure snapped, taking the entire thing down. "Oh!" I never got to finish my words. The fire escape turned and twisted upon itself, and I felt myself be turned this way and that, cutting through my clothes and skin, drawing blood. Drat, I'd have to get that looked at. Donald, or whatever that thing was faring no better. A sharp metal rod had caught itself in his skin and was tearing him apart. At last, with a crash, we both crashed onto the hard concrete ground, piling the two of us under many pieces of rusty old iron. I stopped, yelling then. "Ugh," I murmured. "I'm okay." Donald had no response. No laughter either. No creepy tune. I pushed some debris apart with my left hand, the right hand being unable to move, and pushed myself away. I sighed when I beheld the sight at the centre of the alleyway. Donald, for all his glory and mystery, seemed to be dead. A particularly dangerous metal pole jammed up his chest, another through the back of his throat. "Serves you right," I mumbled. That's when these worms started spilling out of Donald, out of his skin, eyes, mouth, nose, everywhere. They were slimy, leaving traces of black goo everywhere, and they began to spread out. I backed away as a portion began to near me. Back at the centre, the worms poured out more and more, and I could swear that there were more of them than they could have fit inside his body. I mean, the human body is unique, but this just wasn't possible. I watched as the worms finally stopped leaving his body and spread out onto the ground, the streets, everywhere. And then, tired, confused, and sleepy, I fainted. The next thing I knew, I was in a hospital, a cast around my right arm, and wearing an old hospital gown. Ow. As my eyes adjusted to the light, I noticed handcuffs keeping my left arm and me to the bed, and someone on the other side, on a green sofa, staring directly at me. It was daytime outside, with birds and insects chirping, and for once, I felt well rested. "You're finally awake," my visitor commented. I realised who it was. Black suit, dark glasses, brown hair tied back in a ponytail, and a particularly strong coffee in a cup. "Stephanie!" I greeted, stressing the E to show my annoyance. "Why am I cuffed to this bed?" She shot me a funny look. "Mind explaining how you were found passed out in an alley next to the body of the now dead murder suspect Donald Zoll?" "No," I replied. "I don't remember much of—" "You don't have to answer that question," she assured. "We have it all on camera." Stephanie showed me a tablet. The screen displayed various images of me jumping onto a balcony with Donald chasing me, another image of me jumping onto the fire escape, then one with a fire escape crashing down. And lastly, several concerning shots of me in my apartment, taken from inside. Mind telling me why there's a camera inside my private, personal apartment? I asked through clenched teeth. I don't remember ever allowing anyone to put cameras in my apartment, and I sure didn't put them there myself. Quint did that, Stephanie explained. They actually put them in there quite a while back, a few months ago. They said you allowed them to do that? I did no such thing, I rebutted. I'll have to confront Quint later, and have my lawyer handle this, unfair use of... It's fine, Kaya, said Stephanie. Don't contact anyone. I won't be reporting your, personal habits to the government for quite some time. Why are you doing this? I pointed out. I'm probably the worst person you've met. Why are you trying to be my friend? I literally take advantage of grieving people. I don't know, Stephanie shrugged. Maybe I know because after all that cruelty, you just might have a lovable heart inside you. And for also apprehending that serial killer for us a while back, Chet Adami. Oh, right. I remembered I'd been on a case with my previous partner, some guy named Anders. I helped him with some clues, and it eventually led me to meeting Stephanie. And then we all went out to celebrate, and clearly, Stephanie saw something in me that night. Okay, what about the cuffs? That's for you not leaving when I read you this file case, Stephanie explained, taking out a boring envelope and retrieving a printed copy of some old file. Quint found this somewhere, wouldn't explain further. Let me guess, they just said, I'm the expert. Exactly! Should I press charges, or... It's fine, I replied. I'll deal with them myself. Now, the case file? It's about a similar case that's happened. Actually, 5 cases, Stephanie explained. 1821, 1976, 1921, 1976, and now, well, you, 2021. Let's begin. I'm going to keep it simple here. I don't remember everything that Steph told me, so I'll just touch on all the details I do remember. In 1821, a young maid claimed to have seen a strange man following her. According to her, a strange man would suddenly appear out on top of buildings, just watching her, and nobody else could see him. And if they did, they came down with a fever and died shortly after, or completely forgot the incident. It's also important that the man was singing a tune, a whistle, I assume. Luckily for us, she was able to read music and wrote the notes down. I can't read music well, but Stephanie sure as hell can, and wrote it into some program and played it out. Exactly the same as what I'd been hearing. After trying to tell her employers, more like owners, multiple times about the events, she was found cursed or something by some priest, and she was locked up in a room for 3 days. For the first 2 days, she was heard yelling about a man in the room, in the corner, just smiling and staring. And on the 3rd, well, she just wasn't in the room anymore. She was gone without a trace, but something was left behind. A small wooden cube with dots all around it. Dice. And Quint added in a note a court jest popular to have played with dice a half-century earlier, vanished under mysterious circumstances. And the dice? According to more notes, wherever that dice went, catastrophe occurred. Revolutions, revolts, fires, death. In 1876, a young boy claimed that one of his teachers, a private tutor, acted strange, had a demonic smile, and would always appear in the corner of his eye. Except when she appeared in the corner of his eye, he claimed that her neck was twisted in an impossible angle, and that black lines were twisting underneath her skin, like worms. That little boy vanished a month after meeting her. The school never reported having one-on-one lessons with that boy. A week after stating that, a flash flood hit the area, and everyone in the village drowned. In 1921, a teacher claimed that a child was possessed by evil. She said that one of the children attending the school was eating pencils, yet only when they were alone. She also mentioned that strange symbols were being carved every day into the walls all around her house, and that she could never find out why. But a month into meeting the boy, he vanished, and there were no records to be found. Nothing of further occurrence happened, but she came across a strange maid's dress that looked ancient one day in her closet. She sold it for a fortune, and nothing further happened. 1976, a mildly famous chess player was hearing things, voices. According to his statement to the police, these happened when he met a man who looked like he'd come out from the grave. As time grew on, the voices got worse, and before anyone knew it, he was hit by a car. Except, see, there's one odd thing about that. According to a single witness, it said that he seemed like he was pushed by someone, or something, into the street. The guy didn't die just yet. It took him a month to die, stuffed away in a distant and unknown hospital. The strange thing is that, physically, he was fine, yet the man always felt sick, off, like something was wrong with him. One day, he started throwing up this vile black liquid that, according to doctors, seemed to crawl and seep into the ground. Over the course of this day, the vomiting got worse, and in the end, he was too weak to stand up, and he spent the last hours of his life throwing up and laying down in a bed. Before his ultimate demise, he gave something to his closest friend, a strange chess piece that looked as if he had bitten into it. When his friend asked the doctors to check his teeth, let's just say his teeth were all intact and complete. When he died, it was as if the energy inside had gone completely. According to one Dr. Ames, he was drenched in this black sweat and was talking to someone who wasn't there. And then, when he took his final breath, the doctors claimed that a mass of these black worms started seeping out of his skin, just leaving and disappearing into the floor. They caught some in jars, and the worms that were caught simply dissolved into black goo. They were supposed to be sent to the government for study, but instead, some people wearing taxidermied deer heads appeared in the hospital one day and vanished with them. One more thing. The name of the chess guy who died? Donald Soul. I don't know what to say, Steph, I murmured. Thanks for warning me I might be turning into black worms. Don't think that's going to happen to you, Stephanie replied, unlocking my handcuffs as she did. If these preposterous stories that Quint found are true, you do have a chance to live. That schoolteacher did, remember? Thanks, Stephanie. That helps so much, I grumbled as I stood up. I remembered what she'd said earlier about our friendship. Want to get lunch? I wish I could, she replied. I've got a follow-up on this Donald case. Your neighbour 3 doors away, Olivia Stone? Rainbow-haired, kind of noisy, I asked. She invited me over for dinner once, and then we had a debate about serial killers. That sounds like her. She claims to have seen the exact same things you have in your report. Interesting. I'll take that lunch offer. She looked at her calendar app on her phone as she said that. 2 days from today, yes? Agreed. With that, we parted ways. I collected my personal effects, changed, and left the hospital. And Rengage, she went out to investigate. That's when I felt the paper in my pocket. A brochure, white text among black, a fancy PTE logo inscribed in gold as a background. Path towards enlightenment, I read aloud. Those who embrace evil will be judged by the black flames of judgment. I thought back to the black flames I saw the day before. 30 minutes later, I was heading into a church-like building, except where all the crosses would be. There were strange symbols that almost seemed reassuring to me, like they belonged there. I checked my watch. They were having a service, and it was almost over. I decided to go inside the meeting room and check out what all the fuss was about. The meeting room was huge, and there were more people there, sitting in pews than I thought. 100, 200, perhaps more, and they were all listening to the older guy, Amadeus Schwann, preach onto a stage. And so, let me tell you a story, he continued, flipping the pages of a thick book. Let us turn to Leviathan 7, message 3. There was a rustling of pages. And so Leviathan, messenger of the Kokeu, went along the path until he saw a village, and he saw that the people in the village were unbelievers, and they needed to be shown the path. So the messenger Leviathan got up atop a black rock in the centre of the village and drew out a crowd and began to speak the message of the gods. I unconsciously sat down and took a book for myself, flipping to the page, whispering the words to myself. And so Leviathan stood atop the rock, and he said, "If we are made in the image of gods, doesn't that mean we have the potential to become gods ourselves?" And the people were so swayed by his words that they abandoned the path of evil and strode towards the path of light. Sacred are the will of the gods. Sacred are the will of the gods, the congregation murmured. Earlier I talked about Kaleri, a disciple of Leviathan, and how she found a village of unbelievers, and yet, when she spoke the message of the Kokeu and our core belief, they rejected her. And remember, they who embraced evil, even after being shown the gift of light, were cast down and burned by the black fires of judgment. He paused. And so, may the light guide you. That is all for today. The crowd clapped, cheered, spoke with one another as they got up. I made a move forward, heading for the stage. Amadeus Schwann looked at me and nodded, as if he'd expected me. "Schwann, was it?" I asked, just as the last members of the congregation left, the door shutting with a slam. "My name is not important, for I am but one guide on the path," he remarked. He looked at my broken arm. "I see you fell with evil, and it caused you harm." "Guess you could say that," I replied. "What's this black flame, though, and what's the path towards enlightenment?" "Skeptical you are?" he asked. I nodded. "I'm skeptical about many things, but I have an open mind." "Fortunately, the path requires no leap of faith," he smiled, putting an aged hand onto my broken arm. "What are you doing?" He smiled, and then began to hold up his holy book and began to speak. "Blessed are the Kokeu, who created all things, sacred are the will of gods." I could feel my arm tingle, like energy was coursing through the air. And then I saw Amadeus's eyes light up, as if they were blue fire. Beneath his hand was a pale yellow glow that grew brighter as he read, and suddenly I could feel my arm again, working properly. I took the cast off and, well, it worked. It was fine. I rolled up a sleeve. A scar that had been there a decade was gone, back to original skin. "How?" I choked on my words. "How did you do that?" He simply smiled and patted my head. "The path finds you worthy, Kaya Jones." With that, he walked away, leaving me stunned, scared, and confused. If anyone knows anything about the path, or whatever's going on, I need to know.